So you should have this pulled up in VS Code so far. So if you pulled it down verbatim, yeah, I think Mo and Darnell, a few of you have noticed that there's a problem with it. If you try to get the application up and running, you may find that you have this error. Products is not defined. That's because there's a little line here, line 17, where I say comma products, but that variable doesn't exist yet, so you'll want to remove.
Yeah, I got that in Mr. Smith. It was the npm install helped. So
yeah, so that's the other thing. The package I gave you, right, was without node modules, right? That was to make the zip smaller. So the other thing you want to do, in addition to removing the products, is you'll want to open up a terminal window, type in npm install to make sure you have all the dependencies there that are already in the package.json. Okay, so please do that now. Get those installed. So our goal for today is pretty simple. I'm just going to be building 2 pages. One that lets us see the list of products that are available in the database, and a second page to get information about one specific product. So we're just building 2 pages today, and both of those effectively need to run a select query of some sort. So one is selecting all the products, and yes, Jonathan, I am recording this. So I'll get that up.
Just so I'm clear what's happening. So you sent, is this going to be a lab assignment that we're getting graded on?
This is not something you're getting graded on.
Okay.
But this is to show you some of the stuff you'll need to know to actually do the labs, right?
Got it.
This is just an illustration example. Some of the stuff we do here will overlap with the lab, with what you need to do there, but it's just an example. Cool.
What did you say you wanted us to install with npm?
You're just going to say npm install, and
that's it.
Yeah, because that will install everything that's already installed. Does that make sense? Because you need to install debug.env express handlebars.
Gotcha.
So if you have all that installed, you should be able to actually start it. And when it boots up, you should see this link here. It says localhost 3000. And when you spit out a link, VS Code actually knows to turn that into a link you can click on. You just have to hold Control when you click on it. So the way I'm building that link real quick, because we didn't see that in a previous example, I'm putting a few things together. I'm in here. I've got my template string. You can start that with the graves at the beginning and the end. And I've got a placeholder for the host name and the port, which I'm kind of injecting there. So I've got the host name is coming from an environment variable, as well as the port is coming from an environment variable. Okay. Previously, I just had the port coming from an environment variable. So that's the reason I have those 2 pieces, so I can create a nice link like that. Cool?
Yep.
Okay. So we've got the package up. We've got that running. So in order to interface with the database, I'm going to introduce you to 3 packages today. We haven't installed them yet, but we'll be here installing them in a minute, kind of one by one. So we'll be going over first using the MySQL package directly, and then we'll talk about config, and we'll talk about connects. Config is going to make it easier to kind of organize your configuration and your environment variables. And connects will make it so you can write, puts a layer on top of SQL. Makes it easier to build applications that work with more than one database. It also makes it better for building like dynamic queries, where the query might depend on the user input, for instance. So it's good for a lot of things there, and that's why I want to show that. I think that's primarily the way I want you to interface with MySQL, is using connects instead of using MySQL package, but we'll go through the MySQL package first. Okay, so if I want to look up the documentation for the MySQL package, where do I go?
npm.
Okay. And you're going to go out to npmjs.com, right? And let's look for MySQL. Okay, so there's the package literally named MySQL. That's the one we're looking at right now. Okay, we can scroll down and it'll kind of tell us a little bit about how to set it up and use it. You can see we need to run npm install MySQL. So that's the first thing I want to do. So I'm going to stop this server. I'm going to hit the trash can, kill it. I'm back to my shell here where I did the install previously, CLS to clear it. So what I want to type in is npm install, or you could just type in npm I MySQL. Okay, so that's put it into our package JSON, just like what normally happens, right? But I need to do a little bit more work to actually connect to the database, right? So step one is to install the MySQL package. Our next step is if we kind of scroll down here, okay, what does it tell us to do? Well, we need to first require the MySQL package, kind of like we're used to doing. We need to import it. We need to create a connection, and then we need to potentially connect that connection. Now, if I remember right, you can shortcut that a little bit. Let me open up one of my example projects real quick off to the side. Open folder. I want to go here. What's going on? Oh, there's all of it. Okay. So you could use this code as is. This creates a single connection, but you'll notice that they do the connection, they execute a single query, and then they close the connection, right? So that's, you can do that way. You really shouldn't use the database that way, because it means that anytime the user wants to do something, you have to open a connection and close a connection. And opening a connection oftentimes is pretty slow. It can take a few seconds just for this connect to go through, right? So we would usually like to reuse a connection. Does that make sense? We want to reuse a connection. So in order to reuse a connection, I need to use instead something called a pool, right? A pool of connections. And that pool kind of keeps track of a few open connections rather than opening a new one every time I need a new one. Okay, so the way I write this code is going to be a little bit different. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is we need to kind of get the connection details. So in server.js, I'm going to do this, probably after my imports. I'm going to say first I need to import the MySQL package. So MySQL is equal to require MySQL. Okay, so I'm going to require the MySQL package. And then I need to figure out what my connection properties are. So I'm going to create another variable. We're going to call this maybe database config. Okay, so I need to create an object with a few different properties, which we're kind of seeing what they are here, right? So I need a host, a password, a database name. I'm also going to need to say how many connections I want to have. Okay, so what is, if I'm using this Cowboy Boots database, what is the name of my database? Where might I be able to find that?
In the SQL. I mean, the schema.SQL.
Right. So let's go look in the schema.SQL that goes with this, right? So we can see the name of the database that I'm creating.
Cowboy Boots 3.
Cowboy Boots 3. So that's the name of the database I'm going to use here. Okay. So my database is Cowboy Boots 3. Okay. Next, I need the host, right? So the host is what computer is hosting the database. And in this case, right now, it's our own computer, right? So it'd be localhost. Okay. What port do I need to connect to on my computer to get to MySQL?
3600. Or would it be just the 3000?
So the default is 3306.
Oh, yeah, 30.
3306. So that's the number I want to use here. Okay. What about my user, right? What user account have you created?
Was it admin?
So you might have an admin. You probably just have root, right? So I could go in here and I could say, well, let's put root and password, right? Put my password there. But maybe I don't want everybody to know my password, right?
So you'd put it in a .env?
I could put it in a .env, but is the .env, that only works if you don't check the .env in, right? So really, I do kind of want this to be where? Not in
a JSON then? Would you put in a separate configuration file like configuration.json or?
Well, if I put it in a file in here, right, is it going to be checked into version control?
No. You can exclude it.
What if I forget to exclude it?
Well, then you're at a tough road then.
So your password, you really don't want to put your real password in any sort of file, right? So the place where we really want to put our username and password is where? Not in a file, but in a environment variable, right? So
that's what I meant by .env. I didn't know. Okay.
Well, .env, these are still text. This is still text.
Yeah, environment variable. I didn't mean .env. Like I meant the environment variable.
Yeah. So, I mean, I would actually want to put this in an environment variable. Now, before I do that real quick, I want to walk you through how you create an account with MySQL Workbench. Just so you know how to do that, and that way you don't necessarily have to use your root account for this. So back in here, you'll remember that we were using the schema tab to set up the schema, right?
Yes.
In order to mess with users, we actually need to go back to the administration tab. Okay, so I'm under administration now. Does everybody see that?
Yep.
Okay, I'm going to go up to users and privileges. Okay, and you'll see I already have an admin account. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and delete my admin account so I can start from scratch. I'm going to say add account. Okay, so in here it said new user. I'm going to name this account. I'm going to call this admin. Authentication type is standard. Limits to Houghton massing. I'm going to leave this as the %sign so that you can connect to it regardless of if it's localhost or how you're referring to connecting to the database. But I want to set a password. So here I'm just going to set this right now as password. Okay, it's going to be a weak password. That's okay. You can change it to be something else if you would so choose, and you might want to do that now. But I'm putting this in as admin and password. Now, if I do this, this will go ahead and create an account if I hit apply. However, that account doesn't have permission to do anything, right? So I've created the account, but it doesn't have the permission to do anything. So I need to give it permission to get to the database. So I'm going to make this admin account. I'm actually going to make it all powerful. It can do anything because that's kind of the quick fix. So I'm going to mark this as DBA. DBA means he can do anything. So this is under administrative roles, DBA. So if you give them DBA, they basically have all the same permissions as root. Cool. So you probably don't want to give that just password, but I'm going to do that for making this example simple so you can kind of follow along. So if you use a different password here, then use that. You're going to use that other password in code. So once I've checked DBA, I'm going to hit apply. Now I have a user with the admin, with the database administration permissions. Any questions on that?
Nope.
When you want to get back to work with your schemas, where do you go?
Schemas.
Okay, schemas. So don't forget to go back there to get back to your schemas. Okay. So I've got a user created. I can now put that in here. So he is user admin and password. Okay. If you're using your root account, this would say root. Okay. So those are the connection bits that we need. One last setting I need to put in here is connection limit. Yeah, I'm going to set this to 10. Okay. So that's for the purpose of, remember I said we're going to set up a pool of connections where it's going to try and reuse that connection. So this number 10, that connection limit is the size of the pool. So we'll try and it'll keep up to 10 connections open. And try to reuse those 10 connections. Okay. So now that I have that, I need to create my pool of connections. So const pool is equal to MySQL dot create pool. So if you do create connection, that gives you a single connection. Create pool gives you a pool of connections. And then I need to pass in my database config. Any questions so far?
Nope.
Okay. So this pool of connections, I can basically use it like it is a single connection for the most part. But it will then reuse those connections instead of creating a new one every time I need to do that. When we work with Connects will do this under the covers. We don't have to do this directly. It's still going to use a pool though. All right. Now I need to go back to here. So let's say we want to pull some data. So on my home page, I'd like to show all of the products that are in the database, right? So if we're kind of looking at the documentation, you see that they say that you can use query, right? So that's the method I need to call. And query takes two things. It takes, first of all, a SQL query, a string of SQL code that it's going to run. And then it needs a callback that's going to call when it gets the results. Okay. So let's build that in here. So in the home page route, right? That's here on line 27. I'm going to say I want to get all of the connections. I mean, all of the products. So let's say we do that. So the first thing I want to do is I want to go to my pool, and I'm going to say dot query. Okay. Now, if I want to get all of the products, what kind of SQL statement do I need to write?
Select all.
I need a select statement, right, of some sort. Okay. Now, what do you mean by select all?
Like select star.
Probably select star. Okay. Do I need anything else in there?
From products.
Okay. So from products. Okay. Will that select everything in my products?
Yeah, I believe everything from your products table. Yeah.
Okay. So select everything from the products table. And then I need a callback, which is going to take potentially an error or it may take an error, or it may take a results. So if something goes wrong and maybe it can't find the products table, this is going to come back with an error. But if it works, then I'll have the results will be an array of products. Okay, so I'm either going to have an error or I'm going to have results. Comment this out. So one of the things I don't want to do, I don't want to immediately render here. I need to wait to render until I get my results. Okay, so if there's an error, then I want to show that to the user. Okay, if there's an error, I want to show that to the user. Now, how could I go about showing it to the user?
By displaying a debug, or to the user, or to like the, what do you mean
in the
by
browser, right? Let's say I want to show them something in the browser, some info about, hey, something went wrong.
Are we at Ajax yet or no?
Let's assume no Ajax.
Send a 404 response through app.json and then 404.
Okay, no.
Just
No.
put it in the object that you send with res.render.
Okay, so I could put it in a res.render. Okay, I could put kind of the error message in there, right? So I could add that to my layout. What I want to show you here is actually the way that you normally build 404 pages or 500 pages in with where you normally build these error pages with the Express. So you'll see that in this, I've kind of already added, because I forgot to take it out, request, response, and then you see next as the third argument. So remember that, you know, in JavaScript, you can kind of leave off arguments. So that's kind of what we've been doing. But next, what that is it's a callback to like the next handler or the next route. And specifically, if I call next with an error, then that will run the error handler logic. So for instance, in here, if I have an error, I can write this as next error. And that will end up displaying the error as like a 500 error message. Okay. Now let me try that real quick, because I'm gonna change this, right? Our name of the table is products, right? But if I misspell that and I just write it as product, right, it won't be able to find the table. Is that clear?
Yeah.
So it won't be able to find the table because I have an error in my SQL. So let's go refresh this page and see what we get. Okay. Well, that wasn't so happy. Oh, because I don't have my server running. Duh. Okay, I need to go back and hit nodemon here. Server's running. Refresh. Okay, there we go. So you see how it shows me error no such table, table cowboy boots, product doesn't exist. See that? So in general, you can try to handle the error sometimes, but if you don't have a way to handle the error, then you're just going to say next error, and that will send it on to your error handler middleware, which we haven't built the error handler middleware yet, right? So that's one of the things we still need to do, but there's built-in error handler by default, right?
Yeah. I actually got an access denied error.
Access denied error?
Yeah.
Well, that will mean that you probably have something wrong here. It may mean that you don't have a Cowboy Boots 3 database. So, for instance, if I put this as Cowboy Boots 4, and let's try that again, well, I would get a different error, right? Part of it may, or if I have, let me go back to 3, admins, there I get access denied. See, so I get access denied if I have the wrong username and password.
I'm getting a not supported auth mode. Consider upgrading MySQL MySQL client.
You might need to go into the account, right? So your login, we've set it as standard, right?
Yeah.
You might be, like you see the root is caching SHA password.
Yeah.
If you're using it, you may need to make sure that authentication mode is standard for the user that you're using.
Okay.
Are we supposed to drag in our own Cowboy Boots database?
Yeah, you'll need your own.
Oh.
Well, no. Sorry, you won't need your own. You'll want to use the schema SQL. Use this SQL. Run this that I have here in the data.
Oh, okay.
Use this Cowboy Boots.
Can you show me how to get back to that users page? Because I already exited out. So.
Yeah, you go into administration and you go users and.
Oh, user. Okay, there we go.
Yeah. So make sure that that's set to standard. Okay. So let me get back to here. Okay. So you need to make sure that you have the database there, and you want to make sure that all of those things are right. Let me go back to products. So if I do that right now, I should actually see it just spinning because I'm not responding. So what I want to actually do is, if there's not an error, that's where I want to render the home page. So if there's not an error, I'm going to render the home page, and I'm going to pass in the results as a thing called products. So if there's a problem with connecting to the database, I'll call next. But if it's all good, I'm going to pass those results on to my view as products. Is anybody still having problems connecting to their database?
No,
I'm not getting it to work.
What were you saying, Paul?
It's not working. I get all the text there, like you did when you changed from product to.
What was what's the specific error? Because you saw 3 different errors there.
Let me go back.
Because the specific text of the error matters, right?
Mr. Smith.
Yep.
I set it as a DBA, but I'm getting. Oh, never mind. All right, never mind.
Okay. Remember to hit apply.
Yeah, that was.
Wait, are we supposed to be creating a new user? I thought we said you could use the still root.
As long as you, well, this would have to be standard, like what you found. So you may have to create another one to have it be standard.
Yeah, that was what my problem is. I was just trying to use root, and it was showing me that authentication thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm running into, but I thought we could just use root.
So then you won't be able to use root. You'll need to use another account.
What is it supposed to do again? Can you show that when it's working? There's no error?
This. Yeah, just no error. Be running without error.
Oh, okay. I don't know what I was doing. Wrong browser, I'm not sure, but it's working now.
Okay.
Mr. Smith,
Yes?
when we create the new user, should we put in a password for it, or is that not something?
You do need to put in a password for it. A password. Whatever password you choose, obviously you need to put it in here, right?
Do you have like a database you want to import to this or no?
The schema.sql. Just look under data.
Oh,
okay. Right, it's right here. So that should give you Cowboy Boots 3.
I was looking for that.
We're gonna set the limit to host matching to localhost, right?
The which?
The limit to host matching. It's a percentage sign right now.
No, it should just be percentage. That's percentage is anything.
Okay.
Yeah, just leave it as percentage. Localhost would be more secure, but it may be that you want to connect through it different ways. So having it be the wild card is a little bit more general.
Are we supposed to take that schema SQL and then open that up in MySQL and then everything should work?
Yep, and then run it.
Yeah, I'm not getting the option to run it. The lightning bolts are crossed out.
How are you opening it?
Opened up the SQL schema SQL and Explorer and double clicked it. Is there another way?
Yeah, that would be the wrong. That would probably be the wrong way. So you go into Workbench and open it from there. So in Workbench, I'm going to open that. See where I've got projects. This is here. So I'm just going to hit the lightning bolt here.
Okay, it's still grayed out.
Did you open it again? Did you open it from here, from the menu, or did you try to open it from File Explorer?
No, I did it the wrong way first, then I did it the other way.
Okay. Well, make sure you're tabbed in to make sure that that's the, you've got like that highlighted, for instance. Other than that, I'm not sure.
Okay.
So
yeah,
I just did what you did.
Yep.
And I'm still getting a DB access denied error, and I have all my account stuff set up.
So DB access denied would say that it doesn't like your username and password, right? Or it would say that you haven't given it the role, right? So it may be that you haven't given it DBA.
Yeah, that's what I forgot.
Mr. Smith, can you go back to the connection code you have?
Yep.
Database, thank you.
All right, now I'm at the no such table, so I'm all caught up.
Okay, good.
Oh, and I think I figured out my error. I had it open in VS Code at the same time.
Okay. So going back here, right? So we run the query, right? We're waiting to send a response to the user until we actually find out whether or not we got results, right? So if we would put stuff after, right? If I'd say res render and I try to render the results here, that wouldn't work, right? So this is kind of where we're starting to see some asynchronous code, right? We can't just immediately write word, do this, then do this, and then do that, right? We have to wait for the callback. Cool?
Yep.
So when it comes back, we call this callback, and then that's going to either show us the error page, which we saw, So you want to make sure you set that back to products. And if it is successful, then we're going to pass in the results, which is the second argument here, to the view. Okay. So in my view, I would like to kind of loop through the products and show each of those products, right? So in handlebars, what structure, what helper do I use to basically do a loop?
It's each, for each.
It's an each, right? So rather, here I've got my to-do. I'm going to remove that. And I'm going to add in an each. And we're going to start it kind of ugly looking. But then I'm going to make it look a little bit nicer. So let's start. We're going to loop through the products. It's called products because that's what we called it in server.js, right? So I said products is the results. So for each product, we're going to create some HTML code. So I start that with hash each, and then I end that with / each. Within there, I can refer to the different properties, or the different columns of our rows. So remember, if we're looking at the schema, the products table has an ID, it has a name, it has a category, and it has a price, right? So I could spit some of those things out. So let's add a div, and maybe I put a few of these things in. So maybe span, and let's say we want the name, and the price, maybe the name, the price, and the category. So I loop through the products, and I'm going to display the name, the price, and the category for each. So you can see that happening here, right? So now that I've saved that, refresh here, I've got baby boots, I've got silver buckle, I've got wide brim hats. So just like that, I have some data, right, from my database appearing in my application, right? If I want to add another row to this, where could I go add another row?
In the schema, SQL, or in the database.
We go to database, right? So let's say we want to add another product to this. Maybe I go to the table, right? So we can kind of see, run a, I'm going to set this as my default schema, start a new SQL, and do a select star from products. Okay. So I can see what's in there. If I want to insert it, let's say we insert a product. So maybe I insert test as the name of, well, I gotta give it the name of the table first. Insert products value or columns. I want to do a name, category, and price. Price, values. This is the test item. It's in maybe the other category, and it's $1. Right? So I've got another product here, right? So assuming this is all working, I should be able to see this test product in my application, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So let's go back here, refresh the page. yay, we see test one other, right? So it's not, I'm not just, not just looking at an array or hard-coded data that's in my application. I'm looking at the data that's actually stored in this database, right? So one of the things you said is the schema. Well, the schema is just the instructions to create it, right? Once your database is there, then you kind of manipulate it with the app and the database, right? So this is kind of just to get it set up.
So the SQL, I mean the schema.SQL is just to connect everything, but you actually do everything in the database is what you're saying.
Once you've got it set up, then you can do it in the database. But that's the instructions to get it up and running. The reason we did that, remember, was so that I could have a copy of your database, right? So you could give your database and your data to me, so I can run the same data you have. Okay, so we've got data there, but this is not terribly user-friendly, right?
Yeah.
So what I'd like to do is put this into a format that works, that's going to look better for users. So get this up and running over here. And something's not right. User admin. What password am I using? Got admin password. And I maybe... There we go. So this is what I'm going to build. So you can kind of see where we're going. Right? So I've got basically each of the products is going to be a card, and it's going to be sort of responsive, right? So if I've got enough screen real estate, I'll put 2 products per row, and if I don't have it, or if I'm on mobile, I'll just do 1 product per row. Cool?
Yeah.
Okay. So given that that's my goal, given that this is my goal, what's the first kind of layer I need to have in here?
A div and a container.
Okay, well, I have a container. Yep, that's already there.
Then you want to paste like the card structure. So from Bootstrap, because it's running, that's a Bootstrap card, correct?
Right, so I'm going to need to put cards in there. But what do the cards go into?
Inside the div. Between the products thing, but you're only going to put 1 card, and it's going to loop through each item and display it like that.
Okay, somebody else. What else do I need in here? Yes, I need cards. What else? Are the cards inside of something? What?
Bootstrap grid system.
Grid system, right? So on the outer side, I still need a grid, right? So the grid is first container, and then row, and then columns is what I need in there. So on outside of the loop here, I need to actually add another div, and that's going to have the class of row. Okay, so I've got a row, and now I said I want to do, sometimes it's 1 column and sometimes it's 2 columns, right? So I need to specify in here that at some breakpoint, how many columns should this be? Well, by default, it's how many columns? It's 12, right? It's 12 on mobile. So I just need to tell it what it's going to be on desktop or larger sizes. So I'm going to put in col-large-6. So as long as the as long as I have a large screen or bigger, it's going to show up as 6 columns, which 6 and 6 is 12, right? So that's what makes it appear side by side. So that's how I get my responsive grid. I just use a row and a column. Any questions? Okay. So now I can start putting in my cards. And one of the things I would stress here, yes, you can go to the Bootstrap documentation and you could copy paste something. I would stress not doing that. I would stress precisely not doing that. Because the card system is actually really flexible. But in order to use it, you kind of need to understand how it works and what are the parts that you need, right? And you really need to get to that point where you remember what those classes are from memory, okay? So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to actually build it up, not looking at the example, not looking at the examples. So the first thing I need for a card is the card class itself, right? So I'm going to add a div in here. This represents our class card, right? So that's our cards. Inside of the cards, does anybody remember what are the important parts of a card?
Card header.
So there's a card header, right?
There's a body.
There's a body, and sometimes there's a footer, right?
Yeah.
Now, if I want to make it look like this, do those cards have a header?
Yeah, the title.
They have a title, but they don't have a header. Can you see that? Because remember, the header is kind of separated and it's got a darker background.
Yeah.
So sometimes it looks good depending on what you're building. But in this case, I think it's going to look better if I don't have a header and I don't have a footer, right? So what that means is I'm going to be building cards that just have a body and no header or footer. And this is part of why I say sometimes you need to go off head knowledge and knowing how the system works instead of just the example. Because if you just pull the example, they'll tell, oh, you need to have a header. Well, you don't really have to have a header. So let's go add in div. As it turns out, we want everything here to be in the card body. Okay. So what would be probably an important thing to have in here? Probably the first thing I might add is the name. Right, so let's say I just start with cards that just show the name. Okay, so that gives me some cards like this. Okay. Now you can see I've got some indenting, you've got some padding already, right? So the text is not to the edge of the card. See that?
Yeah.
Okay, so the reason that happens is because I've added the card body. If I don't add the card body, I get something like this. See that?
Yeah.
So the card body is what actually gives it that padding between the outside border of the card and the inside of the content of the card. Okay, so that's what's pushing it in. Okay. Now, I know that I probably want the card, right, to have a title of some sort. And I can see here, well, I'm going to make the title of the card, right, be the name of the item. Okay. So what do I want to put in here? What do I need to add? Well, I need to add a card title class, right? But what tag should that be? Semantically.
Card title.
Okay, but what class? What kind of element? What kind of tag?
Div.
Should be like an H1.
Okay. So I hear div and I hear H1. Okay.
I said H2.
H2. Okay. Notice I have an H1 already. And how many H1s should you have on a page?
One.
1.
1. So if I added an H1, how many H1s would I have on the page?
1 for each product.
I'd have 4, right? So I'd have 1 for each product, which in this case would be 4, right? So I'd have 4 H1. That would not be semantically correct. So yes, this would be an H2 because it's the second level down below because we already have an H1. Okay. So let's say I add that, and just with adding the H2, you can see the text has gotten pretty big, right? And if you pay really close attention, you'll notice that the text isn't centered anymore either. Well, the text is not centered anymore because remember the H2 has some built-in margin on the top and bottom, but the margin on the top is different than the margin on the bottom. Cool?
Yeah.
So let's give this the class card title. The class card title, as you can see, didn't do very much. It actually, the only thing it did, it added a little bit of margin on the bottom. And that basically comes down to the fact that it's more, the title is more about saying what part of the card is so that you can then later style your cards, right? Because you're not meant to, this is not meant to just apply this and then don't put any of your own custom CSS on it. You're probably going to need to put your own stuff onto it. So we're just saying what part of the card is. We're just giving it semantic meaning, basically. So I may want to do that. And then I may want to adjust what the size of that font is, right? So with Bootstrap, there are a few different classes you can use to say, I want it to be this header size. So for instance, if I want this to look like an H4, I can put in H4 and it'll be the size of an H4, right? So I can kind of tune that using those header classes if I want to change the size of the font. And that's irrespective. You see I've got an H4 size, even though semantically it's an H2. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So we use the class for styling, but we use the tag for semantics. Okay. So here I want it to just stay as an H2, so I'm just going to have it be an H. I'm just going to put the H2 class on there. Okay. Now, what else do I have in here? So I've got the title. I've also got underneath that, I've got the price, right?
Yeah.
Got the price. So the price, right, is the price still part of the body?
Yeah.
Still part of the body. Okay. What kind of tag should I use for the price?
An H3.
Okay. So Mohammed, why would I use, or Mo, why do I use an H3?
Because it's a little bit smaller than the actual title.
Okay. Why do you use the headers? Do you use them for styling or do you use them for semantics?
Semantics.
You always use them for semantics, never for styling. You just told me to use it for styling.
You're right. So it'd just be a paragraph tag, and you can style it within the whatever it's called.
So let me go back to semantics. Is this a paragraph?
Would you use a span tag?
Okay. So you said span, right? This is not a paragraph of text, so it's not a P. Span I could use, but then I would have a problem because remember, span is an inline element, right? I'm trying to get these to stack.
So you want to use a div then?
So I'm just going to use a div, right? Because this price has there's not a semantic tag that fits it well. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I need it to be a block, but one of the semantic tags does not fit it well because it's not really a header. If I were to do an outline of this page, I definitely would not put that price in the outline. And it's not really a paragraph of text either. So I'm just going to make it a div.
Would you style it with the H3 class though?
Yes, absolutely. I would style it with an H3 or an H4. I think I'm actually going to do it as an H4, so it ends up being a little bit smaller, but we can look at it as both. So class, let's say I want to put the price in here. So I'm going to put that here, price. But yeah, I could style that with an H3 class. I just wouldn't use the H3 tag because it doesn't have that semantic meaning. So I could put that in there. I think it looks better a little bit smaller. I think the H3 is a little bit too big, so I'm going to use an H4. So it's just a little bit smaller there. Okay. Now you'll notice one thing if you pay attention to the formatting of the numbers, right? Does it look like a price? It doesn't, right? It doesn't look like a price. So I will need to come back in and fix that, right? I'll need to try and format it as a price. Okay. So we'll do that in a minute. I want to kind of lay out some of the styling first, but we'll come back and figure out how to format that. Okay. So I've got the price, I've got the name, and I probably also want the category in there as well, right? So oftentimes things like category, things like the style, oftentimes things like that is worth displaying them sort of as badges or tags, right? So what I'm going to do, just to kind of prepare you for that idea, is I'm going to style it like so. See how this is sort of this button almost looks like, but it's a badge. So Bootstrap has this idea of a badge, and I can use that because I'm probably going to have more than one thing there eventually. So underneath here, I could do a div, and then inside of the div, I'm going to have a series of spans because I want the badges themselves to be inline elements. But I want to create some vertical space here where I can put the badges horizontally. So span class. And the class here is going to be badge primary. So there I'm going to put the category. So badge says that is a badge. Badge primary says it should be a badge with the primary color. If I wanted to change that color, I could, for instance, put in here badge secondary, and I'd have kind of the secondary color for those. And the benefit of doing it this way, if I wanted to say, for instance, this is a small and leather, I'd obviously need that in the database somehow, but which I don't have right now. But I could put that in as additional badges, and they would appear like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's why I'm styling them as badges. And you'll find a lot of places like that where you want to potentially have more than one kind of thing in kind of a little box like that. So that's what I'm doing. Okay. And maybe I change that to an uppercase S and an uppercase L to be consistent. Yeah, that looks better. Okay. So those are things I could pull from the database. I'm just hard coding them here for demonstration purposes. I want to also add in a little space for maybe the description of the item, which again, I don't really have a description. So I'm just going to put that in as some lorem ipsum. Lorem ipsum. I'm not going to have it write it the whole thing out. But I will give this one the class card text, because conceptually this is kind of the text of the card if I was thinking about styling it. Okay. Any questions so far?
Nope.
Well, it's unrelated to this, but I can't get I got an error saying result isn't defined. I think I got to look at what you have for server.
You probably wrote result instead of results then. See, I've got it plural in both of these places. So that's probably what's going on. Okay. So effectively, I'm using this loop to spit out all these cards. And you remember kind of at the beginning of the semester, we kind of talked about, this idea that, Bootstrap it seems like sometimes there's a lot of repetition, right?
Yeah.
But I've kind of removed that repetition, right, with using this loop.
Yeah.
So that's oftentimes how you solve that problem is you say, okay, well, I only need to write one card, and it'll then and keep one card up to date, and it'll kind of figure that out then. Okay, so we've got these parts. What was the next thing I wanted to do? Let's do a little bit more styling on here. So color-wise, you can see I've kind of changed the price to green. Right? So I probably want to give that a class of text success.
Yeah, I thought we weren't supposed to do that. Like,
What?
because it's not really success, so you're just trying to make it look green, right?
You're right. You're right. Here I'm just going to ignore my own advice. You're right. I did say that. But here I'm going to just ignore my own advice and just make it that. The other way I could do this is I could give this the class product price and then do it through CSS, right? Apply it to the price that way. But I'm going to just do this to try and keep the example simple. Mainly, I'm just trying to avoid writing any custom CSS for this example. That's really what's going on. So it's all self-contained. Okay. Other things I might want to do, because the H4 is kind of a header class, it's got some built-in margin in the top and the bottom. I'm actually going to turn that off so that it's more or less centered. Or actually just to get it closer to, I think I say that. I might want to get it closer to there. Although that didn't seem to do anything, so it must have been different when I played around with it. Anyway, that's besides the point. So you'll notice that the cards are next to each other, right? You see there's no gap between them.
Yeah.
And you can see it on desktop, but it's definitely more noticeable on mobile, right? So what can I do to create some separation between the cards?
Use the MB class.
Okay, on where? What line?
The card itself.
The card itself, yeah. So on the card, we'd say maybe MB3. Okay, so that's going to separate them from each other. Cool. So that works fine on mobile, and it works fine on desktop. Yay! Okay. Let's look at two things. So I want to format the date, and I also want to make this into a link. So I'm going to make the title into a link that I can get more information about it. Okay. But let's do the formatting first. So the formatting, remember we talked about how to add helpers to handlebars? So in order to do the formatting, I'm going to create my own little helper to format the price. Okay. So in here, line 22, where I'm creating the handlebars engine, I'm going to add in some additional configuration. So curly brace, we're going to say helpers. Okay, create another object. And the name of this helper will be format price. Okay. So it needs to take a price, and then I want to format it as a price. So what things do I need to do to format it as a price?
Add a $.
Add a $. Okay, so I could say $sign here, and then plus the price, right? Is that it?
No, you also need to get the zeros behind.
Okay, so how can I get those zeros?
Could it be two fixed?
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to say .to fixed. How many spaces do I want? How many zeros do I want?
2.
2. So I'm going to say to fixed 2, right? So that's my helper. Does that make sense? So now anytime I want to format a price in a view, I can just use this helper. So I can use that on any page, any view. So let's go back to home now that I've got this format price. I'll go ahead and drop that into Discord, should you need to refer back to it later. So in here, right, so I've got the price being displayed on line 9. I just need to call format price. And I think that, check, I think that's all I have to do there. Yeah, so I just say format price, the name of the helper, and then the arguments. So format price, yay! We now have all of these being displayed nice and as actual prices.
So if you wanted to make multiple helpers for format, would you just put them underneath the ones you made before, but still inside of the helpers object?
Yep, inside the helpers. I would just put them in there if I need additional helpers. So like if I want one that's equal, I put an equal helper in here, or not, or whatever other formatting I need to do.
Okay.
Cool.
Cool.
So like what else would you think to format? What did you have on your, what were you thinking about?
I mean, I didn't have any example in mind. I was just thinking.
Yeah, you just put them in here under helpers. Okay, so we got that. The next thing I want to do is I want to turn this name into a link, right? So you remember, in order to create a link, I need an anchor tag.
Yeah.
So let's drop this down. So the name, I need to put the anchor tag inside of the H2. Okay. Now, the reason I need to put it this particular ordering is what? Why can't I flip that? Why can't I have the H2 inside of the anchor tag?
Maybe you don't want the whole H2 box to be a link.
Okay.
Is it because of semantics?
There's a semi semantic reason. It actually would be invalid HTML if I were to flip these two things. So the reason is, remember an H2, is it an inline or a block?
Block.
It's a block, right? Is an anchor tag an inline or a block?
Inline.
An inline, right? So anchor tags are inlines, H2s are blocks. Inlines are not allowed to contain blocks. That's technically invalid in terms of HTML. So anytime you have an inline, the inline needs to be inside of a block. So H2 is a block, needs to have the anchor tag inside. If they were both blocks, then I could switch them and it wouldn't matter, or if they were both inlines, it wouldn't matter. But because one is a block and one is an inline, the inline has to go inside. Does that make sense?
Yep.
otherwise the bounding rectangle for your H2 and your anchor tags would be all messed up because they would be the wrong display types. Okay. So now I want the href to point to a page where I can get more information about the product. Okay. So I want to have that be another page. So what could I make the URL here be? What could I make the href be?
The slash or the hashtag sign.
Well, slash would point where? That would point to the home page, right?
The home, yeah.
Which is where we are, right? That would not take us anywhere. Where would that take us?
Just to the top.
Just to the top of the page, right? So what would be... we haven't created this page yet, right? So what we want to do is figure out what the URL should be, right?
Yeah.
So I want to go get information about a product, right? So product should probably be in there. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to go to /product. Okay, let's say I do that. But if I go to /product, do I know what product I want to find information about?
No.
No.
No, I don't, right? So somewhere in there, I need to tell it which product I want to show information about, right? So in order to know which product that we want to see, what piece of data do I need?
The name?
Okay, so you'd say the name of the product.
Category, right?
The category? Well, will the category tell me specifically which product I'm looking at?
Oh, no.
Right? Because the category is not unique. Right? So I want to get information about a specific product. So the name is one option. What's another option? The ID, right? So I could go either by the ID or the name because both of those are supposed to be or probably should be unique, right?
Yeah.
So I could say product /ID or I could say product /name. Okay. Now, what might come up if I said, let's say do the product, let's say product /name is my route. What problems might I run into?
It puts a space in URL.
Might be putting a space in a URL, right? Or other special characters, right? What if my product name has a / in it?
I would break it.
Break it potentially, right? So I could get this to work, and usually when we do that, we actually create something called a slug, S-L-U-G. Usually you create a slug if you're going to put it in a URL like this, and basically a slug is kind of a sanitized name. So it's sanitized to work with your URL, but we don't have a slug. So I'm just going to use the ID. Because my ID is just a number, it won't have any special characters in it or any spaces, right? You with me?
Yep.
So this is a good place to put the ID. So let's say I set it up this way. I'm going to go ahead and hit refresh. All right, cool. So we have some links we can click on, right? So let's say I click on the first one. That'll take me to product 1, right? It doesn't exist yet, but I can see my link is working, right? If I go back here, product 2, great, right? So I want to create that page now, right? So remember, anytime I want to kind of add a new page, I need a route to it, right? It says I can't get it because I don't have a route. So how can I create a route for product 1, product 2, etc.?
But you have to make them all separate.
I was going to say just make the products page first.
Okay. What do you mean make the product page first?
Like create a route to the product page.
Okay. So I need a route to it.
And also like a handlebars view for it.
Yep. Yep. So I need both of those things. So let's say go back to server. We've got our homepage route, right? So a sensible place to add the route would be immediately beneath it, right? So what kind of method am I getting here? Is this a get or a post?
Get.
It's a get, right? Because I'm clicking on a link. So clicking on a link will always be a get. Okay. Now, first thing I need to pass into get is the route, right? So what should be my route here?
Slash product.
Okay, so slash product. Okay. So let's say I do that. What do I need to do next?
Async require.
So I need to do this stuff.
Yes.
So request response next.
Why didn't we put async in there?
Because I forgot to take it out because we haven't talked about it yet. We'll put it in later. You can take async out. I forgot to take it out. We'll get there. So here I want to say when we get to the product, maybe we'll just say let's render the product page to kind of get a simple view. So I'm going to say this is the product view page. And the reason I'm saying product dash view is because eventually I want to have a product edit page, right? So this is just my product view page. Okay. I don't have any data to pass yet. So I'm just going to say product view. Okay. So when you go to slash product, we'll get this product view. Okay. So go to views, new file. This is going to be product view dot what?
Handlebars.
Dot handlebars. Okay, so product view dot handlebars. Okay. If we kind of look at what I did with the home page, you'll see that I need a main because this is the main content of the page. I probably want to go ahead and give this a class. I'm going to give it class container. I'm going to go ahead and give it a class margin top 5 to just give it some space between the content of the page and the nav bar. Okay. So I'm going to call this h1 product view. Okay, so it's a really simple view, right? So if I go to slash product 2, I'm still getting that though. See that? Why am I still getting that?
You haven't changed your link path.
Well, let's look at this. Okay, so you're maybe okay. So if I go maybe not. I don't actually want to change the link path. So if I just go to slash product, I get this, right?
Yeah.
I just go to slash product, I get that. But if I go to slash product 2, I don't get anything. Now, could I change all the links to just point to slash product? Would I know which product to show?
No.
Right? So I can't just change the links to product. I need to have them point to product 2, etc. So I know which product to show. Okay. So in this path somehow, I need to specify there is a number there, right? So for instance, maybe I say /2, right? Let's just say, let's make a route for product /2. Okay, well, I get this one. But now what about product 3? Right?
It's a no-no for product.
Huh?
I said it's a no-no for product 3 because the stuff doesn't pop up.
Yeah. So if I just hard code the number there, right? A lot of times you can just hard code the path, but then sometimes like this, you need your paths to be a little bit more dynamic, right?
Yeah.
So rather than putting the ID directly there, I'm going to use a special kind of trick with that you can use with Express, and you put a placeholder in the route. So you start with a colon, and then you just name it wherever you want to name it. So I'm going to name it ID. If I was putting the name here, I might do :name, right? But I want the ID in the path, so I'm going to say, well, :ID. Okay. So what that does is it actually runs it for all of these. So I can go to product 3 now. I can go to product 4. I can go to product 1. I can go to product test.
But just plain product is broken now.
Just plain product is broken. Okay, that's fine for what we're doing here. But yes, it's broken.
So would you create, like in an instance that we want the product page to work, would you create a different route for it? Or?
Yeah, I'd create another route. I'd create another route which is just product. And really what I would do on that page probably would be to show the product list. Does that make sense? So /product would just show the product list.
Which is what our homepage is currently.
Which is what our homepage is, which is why I'm not creating that page, because our homepage is already doing that. Cool?
Yep.
But that's how I would set that up. If I needed that other one, that would be the list of products. Okay. So now we want to show some information about the actual product, right? So my next step is probably I need to hit the database, right? I need to hit the database so I can get the product. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's say I comment this out, and let's kind of think about how we need to build this out. So pool.query. Okay. So remember, query takes what first? It takes the SQL. Okay. So if I say select star from products, that gives me all of the products, right?
Yeah.
How do I say I just want a single product?
Well, can you ask the question again?
How do I say I want a single product? Like maybe I just want product 2.
Select all from products where ID equals 2.
Okay. So where ID equals 2. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. There's a little bit of a problem here because I'm hard coding the number. We'll fix that in a minute. But I want to say I want some where clause to filter out, not get all the data. Okay. So I'm still going to have a callback. Say, what do I want to do when I get results? So we're going to say error, comma, results. Oop. And so let's say we've got that. If there is an error, again, we want to just show that error. So we're just going to call next error. Yeah, it's a good practice when you're dealing with callbacks like this to always deal with the error first before going on to dealing with the actual results. It's a good practice so you don't forget to deal with the error. Okay. So if there's an error, we're going to show an error. Otherwise, we're going to render the product view. Now, in this case, I'm still getting an array of results, right? But I would only expect to get one product back. Okay, I would only expect to get an array with one product back. So I probably want to say, well, let's get that single product. Const product is equal to what? How do I get the first product?
Results at 0.
Okay, let's say we do that. And then I'm going to pass this product on to the view. Okay. Questions?
No.
No.
Okay. So here I was passing an array of products, and here I want to pass a single product. If I just pass the results directly, then I would have to deal with that array in the view, right? And that would be kind of weird because, well, the view shouldn't know that there was an array. It should just expect to show one product. So that's why I'm kind of pulling that out that way.
How do we avoid hard coding it, the 2 in line 41?
I'll come back to it. Because I want to lay out the view first. So let's go back to the product view. And let's say in the H1, I probably want to show the product name, right? So let's say I do that here. So I want in the H1, I'm going to display the name. What other things might I want to show?
The price.
The price. Okay, so let's make kind of the similar way we did the other one. I'm going to add in a div. Same kind of formatting to format the price. Okay. Now, if we look at this, as soon as I try to run it, it really doesn't like it. And let me pull out the for price for a minute. So when I try to run this, things are breaking, right? Nothing's showing up. Okay. See nothing showing up?
Yeah.
Okay. So where am I looking for the name and the price? I'm looking for them on this project, on this object where the title is, right?
Yeah.
See, product is a separate object, right?
Yeah.
So that's why I'm getting undefined for the name and the price because I'm trying to get it from the root. I'm not trying to get it from the product. So instead here I need to say product.name and product.price. Okay. So if I make that switch, then both of those things show up. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. Now, sometimes it's easier to not prefix everything with product dot, etc. Sometimes it's easier to kind of do it the same way we did here, kind of as if it was in a loop. You see that? So I didn't refer to like products.0.id or such. I just referred to ID, right? So there's another helper when you're working with views like this, where you can say, I only want to look at part of the data, right? So what you want to use is a with block. So remember we used an each block to go through an array. For an object, I can do with. So I'm going to say with product. Start that here, end it here, slash with. I've got an extra slash, so just slash with. Once I do that, I can refer to it without that, or I have to refer to it without that. Does that make sense? So it kind of changes your context. Rather than looking at the whole object, you look at a sub-object. Any questions?
All right, so that instead of just product.name, just do that.
Yeah. Just put a with. Will that work all the time? No, it will not necessarily won't solve your problems all the time, but it can make your code a lot simpler sometimes, like in this case, where we only care about the the properties, of the product.
With is like an alternative to each, you said?
No. So with works with a single thing, with a single object. Each is with an array. Does that make sense?
Yeah, all right. I got it, yeah.
With is for objects. Each is for arrays of objects, or just arrays in general.
Wow, would that... Okay. Even if the array's only got one item in it, it still wouldn't work. With it only works with the object itself.
Correct. With works with objects.
Okay.
Okay. So I can go back in, add the format price again. Format price. Okay. So it's starting to look like something, right? If I go to 1, it says silver buckle. If I go to 2, it says silver buckle. If I go to 3, it says silver buckle, right? So let's fix that, right? I want to use the actual product ID that's in the URL, right? So the way to get that, any guess where that is?
The request?
Probably on the request somewhere, right? So on the request, I want to get the ID of the product. Okay, so I'm going to create a little variable for it. So const ID is equal to request. Now remember where we looked for stuff that was posted with a form? Remember we did request.body?
Yeah.
So request.body gives you things that are posted as part of the form. But if you want something that's part of the route, like this is, you see the colon ID, then I need to go .params. Request.params.id.
And you would put ID in the... You put ID in the select statement?
Yes, we're going to then put the ID into the select statement. Okay. So this is a variable. I need to introduce it into there. So maybe we use a template string. So I'm going to switch it over to Graves. $, curly braces, ID. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So now that I've got the ID in there, it actually matters what the number is. So that gives me a different product based on the number I have in the URL. Right? And if I go maybe to the home page, try to pick one of these, let's say I pick baby boots, you can see it shows me baby boots. Great. Okay. Now, what happens if I say maybe go to an index that doesn't exist? Let's I'm messing with your website and I'm going to an ID that doesn't exist. So let's go to product 100. Well, maybe I want to tell the user somehow that that there's not a product 100. Might that be good?
Yeah.
Yes.
Might want to give a different result there. Okay. So how can I determine that there is no product 100? How in this code can I check that?
To the error? Would it throw an error?
Well, it doesn't seem to be.
With the results array?
Huh?
Would it be with the results array?
Let's look. So if I log, let me see if I log results. So debug, or actually maybe I'll just debug product. Or no, I'm going to do debug. Let's see what happens if I try to debug the whole results array. So let's try to write the whole thing out. So what is it? It's an empty array.
Yeah.
See that? And if I tried to log the product object, any guesses as to what product is going to come out as?
Undefined.
You're right. So I'm getting undefined. So what I need to do is basically check the results array to see if there actually is a result. So I might want to say, well, if the length of the array is such, then I want to display the results. So else, maybe I'll challenge this to an else if. And I could do this one or two ways. I could handle the error case first, or I could handle the good case first. So I might say if results dot length, right? Let's say we handle the good case. What should the length be if there is a product, if there is an answer? Should probably be what?
Just greater than 1 or no 1?
Should be 1, right? So if I get exactly 1 result, then everything's good. Otherwise, I might want to say something to the effect of product not found. So I might say res dot status, right? So status code 404, right? Because it's not found. And send something like that. There we go. Questions?
Nope.
No.
So oftentimes things like that you want to handle as such. Okay. Now what happens? So we've got a good case where we can pass in a number. If we don't pass in a good number, then it shows that. What happens if I write in test space product?
You can't have a space in it, right? Like the typing in the URL or whatnot.
Okay. Well, but it turned it into %20, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Which basically what happened, see, you have an error. It says you have an error in your SQL syntax. So the problem's not with the URL, the problem's with our SQL actually. It says you have a problem in your SQL syntax, check the manual that corresponds to your SQL right syntax to use near product. Okay. So what happened was I took this test space product and actually put it here as the ID. Now, notice I don't have quotes around it. See that? So I'm ending up making invalid SQL, right? And in fact, if I wanted to be really malicious in here, I could put in test delete products, right? And delete the entire products table, right? That's what we call SQL injection, right? That's really bad, right? So typically we need to, sanitize our inputs, but at least, at very minimum, right? I should make sure that this is has some quotes around it.
Sounds quite important.
Should at very minimum make sure that there's that. Okay, because then it will run it and it won't try to deal with that way. I mean, it will still not be happy if I would then put an extra quote in here. Right? I still could be clever and break it.
Oh no.
Right? But at least should put quotes in there. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that way it can handle things that are maybe not that. So the better thing to kind of do, there is a way with Express that you can specify that this has to be a number, if I remember right. I don't remember offhand how to do that, but that's how I would do that. The other thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to put in another library here to actually build and run the query, and I think that might take care of sanitizing the actual SQL. We'll see for sure. Okay. Any question? Yep.
Yeah, those graves you
Yep.
put there, originally they weren't there and it worked and you put them there. Is it just best practice just to put them whenever we're doing queries with a JS file? Or
if you're generating SQL like this, if you're making it like this, then yeah, you want to make sure you include quotes even if you don't need them.
Does it hurt to put them even if you don't? Just
no, doesn't hurt.
I forget.
Doesn't hurt. SQL will already say, oh, ID is an integer, so it'll try to convert this to an integer, basically, kind of thing, sort of thing. So there's no downside whatsoever to putting quotes here.
Yeah, originally you had just single quotes, right? And then you changed them to grave?
Well, I did the grave so I could do the template.
Okay.
So now I have both graves and single quotes. Okay. So let's save that. That's probably a good point to check it in if you haven't yet. Let's see. So what do we still need to do? I still need to talk about config. I still need to talk about connects. I think those I probably won't get in today, just judging time. So I think the one thing I'll do today to kind of finish us up is let's finish up the layout for this product view page. Okay. So I'm going to finish up the layout here. So when I look at what I want to get to, okay, so this is what I want to make it look like. See that?
Yeah.
Okay. So there's a few things I want to do. I actually do want, I know this says product view, I do actually want to change the title because I'd like the title to be the title of the name of the product. So I can change that real quickly here. So rather than title being product view, I want that to be product.name. Problem solved. So now it says baby boots or silver buckle, etc. Okay. So if I'm looking at this layout, you know, I've got things side by side, right? So how can I put things side by side?
Flex row.
Could do flex row. Okay. One option. Give me another option.
Grid.
Could use a grid. Okay. I could do either of those. When I played around this personally, I found out that I think the one that I had the best luck with was actually the grid. Between Flexbox and grid, grid actually gave me the better of the two. So the way I'm going to set this up is basically I'm going to say a third of the space is the image, and 2/3 of the space is the information about it. Okay. So in here, I'm going to add in a row, div.class, div.row, enter. I'm going to take this stuff and move, well, actually I need to create my columns first. So we're going to have one div that is call MD4. Call medium 4. Div call medium 8. So on medium or larger, we'll have 1/3 because 4 and 2/3 because 8. Okay, so I'm going to stick this stuff in the right column. Okay. I want to have an image in the left. So let's add an image tag. Image. I need that to have the class image fluid, so it shrinks and grows. And the source, the path to that image is images. And normally I would create another products folder. So I would normally have this like products, images, boots, which I think we can do here. Let me go ahead and move that around. So I might say images / products or product / boots.jpg. If you look in images, I've already got a boots file there. I'm going to actually move that down a folder. So I'm going to say product, and that way I can kind of separate maybe resources that are part of individual items in the database or images that I'm using for designing the website or laying out the website. So image product boots.jpg. Let's see if that works. Okay, so that's a good start. I might want to actually have maybe not as much. I might want to adjust where the spacing is and things like that. I think, oh, yeah, that one's actually being stretched now that I look at it. So I want to do it this way then. Okay, so I've got one column is the image and the other column is the information. So you can see if I go below medium, it's stacked vertically, and then otherwise here it's like so. Okay. Any questions on that layout? Okay. Yep.
I was about to say I don't think so. I don't have any questions at all.
Okay. Maybe I add some placeholder for the description. So I'm going to add in here add a div, and inside that I'm going to just add some lorem ipsum. And I'm going to go ahead and let mnet generate that and then format it. I guess I can just leave that there. Yeah. So I got some lorem ipsum in there, and that just gives me a placeholder for where my product description might be. Okay. Now I kind of see maybe it's running out to the edge there. Oh, actually it's not inside the column. That's why. I need to move this up. Oh, I didn't save it. There it goes. Okay, so then on desktop it should look like it's on the side there. I think I created a little bit, if I remember right, I added a little bit of space here, so I might want to push that in a little bit. So let's do P3, give that a little bit of margin. That brings it in. Cool. It's nice and lined up. What else? I still need the category, right? Which I'll actually just take the code I have for the badges here I'm going to stick that underneath the price. There we go. So generally what we'll do, right, so we'll have this page, we'll have the home page, which will have you kind of a quick summary, and usually is where you do your searching, right? Usually you're searching for products and doing filtering and all those kind of things. And then you can click on it and get the full explanation and all the images and everything about the product. So those are the two pages. You will also notice that I have some sort of breadcrumb trail here and maybe a buy now button. So let me add those real quick. For the buy now button, I'm just going to add another div in this stack with the class. Well, I'm not going to put class in there yet. I'll add a button in there. So my button's going to be primary and large. So BTN primary, BTN LG. And make a nice big button. I probably want to center it and apply some spacing between here and the button. So I'm going to use my container. So P3 for some padding, text center to get it centered. Okay. So I got kind of a basic layout there. And I might want to add in a breadcrumb trail. So breadcrumb trail is kind of a really important little piece to have because it gives the way for the user to get back or get around with where they're at. Because for instance, on this page, is it really clear how to get back to the home page?
Not really.
Back to the list of products, right? So that's where my breadcrumb trail is helpful. So in order to add a breadcrumb trail, I'm going to just copy this in and we can kind of talk about it. So Bootstrap has a breadcrumb trail built in. And basically the way it looks, you have a nav, because this is a navigation area. You give it ARIA label breadcrumb. That's for screen reader purposes. So remember, anything ARIA is screen readers. It's an ordered list with class breadcrumb. Okay, ordered list class breadcrumb. Then each of the items is a breadcrumb item. Okay, so breadcrumb item. This one has a link back to the home page, which is products, the text product. And then this one is the current page, doesn't have a link, and it just shows the name of the product. And basically the distinguishing point, this one has the active class, the other one doesn't, which is part of why this one's showing up gray, but it's also showing up gray because it's not a link. Okay. Any questions on that breadcrumb trail? No. It's generally considered good UI to have a breadcrumb trail on all of your pages, especially things like this. If there's not a direct link to it in the nav bar, then it should have a breadcrumb trail. If there's a link to on the nav bar, it doesn't have to have a breadcrumb trail. But if it's not something you can directly get to from the nav bar, it should link back to something that is. So in this case, is basically linking back to the home page. Okay. Let's see. Is there anything else I need to do here? I think that's it for the example today because we're at time. So, any questions before we call it a day?
I have one. Do the way we set up our database config, is there any simple way we could change it that we could host this on Heroku or something?
What do you mean simple way to change it?
For our host, this is localhost. Would we have to change that to Heroku or something?
So it'll actually stay localhost.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. Heroku actually expects that to. Well, here's the deal. It's only used for outputting.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
not actually using it when I say listen.
Okay.
Because yeah, in order for it to work with listen, it actually needs to take any host, which is what I'm doing already, by not passing it to listen. So I'm just using it for logging purposes.
So this would work just fine on Heroku?
That would work just fine. But what we need to talk about, I think I'll go ahead and do it. We need to do it tomorrow. So we'll have a lecture tomorrow then, and we'll go over the config package, and we'll go over connects. When I go over the config package, I'll show you an easier way to set this up, if that makes sense. Kind of a more standard way to set up this configuration here. It just requires a little bit more setup. Partly we want this to come from environment variables, but again, config provides a better way to do this. Cool?
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
So
I got a question. The image, if we just go to the page, the server's still running, just click on the links. Do you have the boot for every one? How do we separate it out? Like if you click on wide brim hat, you got the boot, right? You got the boots, you got the boot.
Right. So for instance, if I look at the link here, right, I've inserted the ID in there.
Yeah.
So I would just need to change this. You see I'm saying boots.jpg. I would just need to change that to like image.
Right. That would need to be added into the database then.
Right. You need a column for the image, but I didn't do that to try and keep this simple.
And when you say image, it would just be like boots.jpg or something.
Well, it would be image, but it would be whatever's in the database then.
Yeah, it would just be text. It wouldn't be like there's a file. The actual file would be where it's at.
Correct. The only thing that would be in the database in the image column would be boots.jpg or hat.jpg, etc.
Okay, and you don't have that, so we're just hard coding it.
Yep. So yeah. So tomorrow I'll hit on some of the other things that were on my agenda for today, which is to cover config and connects, and there's another website out there called Mockaroo, which I'll show you to create some. Yep. Mockaroo will help you create some seed data, some test data, which is super helpful. So, all right. So remember, we're in class. We're on campus tomorrow. So I'll have to kind of do this lecture probably more hybrid. I'll do it entirely through Discord so that everybody's here.